Redditors who went to jail/prison. What went through your head on the first day? Went to jail for shock treatment and had to stay 2 weekends. 7 a.m. Saturday to 7 a.m. Monday. You go in for processing, get naked, and then spread your butthole and cough. They take you to your cell and you meet your mates. Hopefully they're cool. Most likely will be if you are staying for a short time. Realizing there's an actual toilet 2 feet from your bed. This is where people crap sometimes while you're trying to sleep. That's the weirdest part. Breakfast is at 5 a.m. Saturday night we got to watch a movie. Everyone seems to be friendly during the movie and will yell out funny phrases or catcall when an attractive lady shows up on screen. Short of it is I basically read Louis L'Amour books the entire time that I borrowed from my cellmate. Also got the nickname Chainsaw Dave because I grind my teeth when I sleep. They said it was as loud as a chainsaw. Edit. To answer what shock treatment is, the judge will usually send first-time offenders to jail over the weekends to scare or shock them into not wanting to go again. It worked for me. But I did see a kid from high school there that I knew. We talked and he mentioned that a lot of people don't mind coming back to jail for 3 or 6 months or a year for minor offenses because they have friends in there already, and they don't have to worry about responsibility. I wear a mouth guard now, by the way. Thankfully, don't have any damage that was ever caused to my teeth. Story 2. My dad is a storyteller and went to prison 3 times. He got out the first time for 2 weeks before he went back for 2 more years. He got out again before he went back and only days later for violation of parole. He never went back because his new cellmate was an 80-year-old man who told him, "I've been here since I was your age. In case you're bad at math, that's 60 years. I have no chance of parole. I know I'm gonna die here. You think being here for however long you're in for is bad? Imagine knowing there's no way out. You best straighten yourself before you end up like me, son." My dad never went back. On an unrelated note, this was the same man who my dad practiced chess with every day for 2 years. I still have yet to beat my dad at chess. Story 3. I got put in max for felony assault up to 8 years. After this dude tried to force my girlfriend, now wife, into a bathroom with him at a bar. I only threw 1 punch, but he wound up falling through a plate window and slicing arteries. After 2 days in holding with people coming down off all the drugs and the transfers trying to start fights with everyone, I got sent to 23-hour lockdown in A-Pod, which is reserved for violent offenders. One skinhead dude was in on 23 counts of various forms of homicide/manslaughter. So things got real fast. Cell got tossed at one point and they questioned me. I didn't say anything, which in hindsight was smart, since when my cellmate got back he asked a guy across the way if I said anything. Then he introduced himself to me. After that we were cool and he vouched for me, saying I was in there for some real stuff. God knows how long it was before this happened. Hours tick by like days. Time stands still. My cellmate had been in for 2 of his 6 years with repeated trafficking, felony firearm, battery on an officer. Well, he got back from a hearing super excited saying, "Well, if I plead a this or that, I should be able to get out within a month." He was dead serious, but inside my head, I knew there was no way. Something about his conviction while staring me dead in the eyes made me realize there is absolutely nothing else in his head but trying to get out. That night while brushing my teeth, I remember staring at myself in the mirror thinking, I truly believe I'm getting out tomorrow too. That was the most eye-openingly present yet emotionally detached pit of realization I have ever fallen into. I was lucky, though. My charges got dropped on self-defense after bar surveillance showed him touching me first, so screw that. I make sure to avoid situations that might put me in that situation. I don't have anything to prove to anyone. It used to be screw cops, but now it's screw jail. I'm never going back. Story 4. I was in jail, not prison. My thoughts were this. 1. This sucks. 2. Oh, the people are a lot nicer than I thought they would be. 3. This is gonna be boring. 4. Food sucks. 5. I have to crap in front of everyone. 6. This sucks. That was jail for a month in a large pod. About 30 people on bunk beds in a large open dorm with 2 tiers. No cells, just big dorm. It was fine. Some people were jerks, but most were okay. Just trying to pass the time while doing their time. Played chess, worked out, did some writing. The books were all like middle school level though, and very uninteresting. Story 5. My first night in county jail was surreal to say the least. My summer of drugs and drinking had culminated into stupid crimes, and there I was. My mom wasn't going to pay bail. I had to learn my lesson. That lesson turned out to be 8 years in a maximum security prison. County jail, I slept with my shoes on the first night, thinking I was going home any day. I viewed myself as a kid, even though I was 21. That somehow, it wasn't really happening. Everything was routine. Breakfast, TV, exercise, TV cards, TV cards, TV cards. 6 months later, they wanted to make an example out of me. 8 years in state prison. In New York, you do 80% of your time, so it ended up being 6 years, 10 months. That first night in state prison, completely different ballgame. First, leaving county jail, you're in shackles. Legs shackled to the guy next to you, so if you try to run, you better hope both of you are really good at convict three-legged racing. The bus brought us under the prison. Hundreds of inmates into what I would call a factory of processing humans for incarceration. Searched, stripped, cavity searched, shaved, showered, deliced, waiting, clothed, waiting, all while hearing the noise of a couple thousand inmates above you not knowing what kind of madhouse you're stepping into. Not much choice at that point. The most important thing I realized is just accept it. You're there. Time will move faster if you get a solid routine and just follow direction. They can't stop your time, but they can slow it up. I've been out longer than I've been in now and have my life back on track. I was definitely going to be dead from something stupid, so I was rescued rather than arrested. Don't go to jail, kids. Being separated from everything was the worst. OP here has to be one of the actual few people where jail did its job or prison did its job. OP got reformed. They have their life back on track and they seem to be doing well now. I wish this were the case more often, but the environment in jail, from what I hear at least, makes it kinda hard. Story 6. I swear to God it happened just like this. It was traumatizing at the time, but now it's pretty funny. So I was young and stupid and accidentally bounced a $25 check at a grocery store. Just after this happened, like within a week, we had to move out of our apartment because our crappy neighbor claimed my dog tried to attack him, which was BS, by the way. So we moved rather quickly, and due to finances at the time, I didn't have the money to get the phone turned on in the new place for about a month. We also missed our mail for about 2 weeks. Mail that included the notice from the grocery store that the check had bounced, and the bank statement for the month that also showed it bouncing. Fast forward a year later and I'm driving to work with a bag full of neurosurgical medical charts for the surgeon I work for. I get pulled over for speeding and oh look, there's a warrant for my arrest. The state trooper was kind enough to let me pull my car off the tollway so I wouldn't get towed. Then I guess he realized I wasn't much of a threat because I ended up in the front seat with him. So picture this innocent little 23-year-old girl in a floral sundress absolutely terrified because nothing like this has ever happened to her before. And what is the first thing the trooper says to me? "This is my first week here in this city, so I actually don't know how to get to the jail from here. Do you know which way I need to go?" So I direct him to the jail. And once we get inside, clutching my purse and the bag full of medical charts, I sit up on a little chair next to the wall. He walks over to talk to someone. He talks, turns, looks at me and talks again, then starts laughing. He walks back over to where I'm sitting and tells me that he will give the bag with the charts to the clerk and she will call my coworker to come get them. Then he says, "Also, you can't sit there. You need to stand on those footprints in front of that desk." I'm still trembling like a leaf and trying not to cry, and I begged to be allowed to stay where I was. He said, "No, they have to be able to see your hands, just in case you have a gun hidden on you somewhere. Not that you could hit anything with the way you're shaking, but the rules are rules." So I stand in front of the desk and he takes my purse and a bag of charts away. After about 10 minutes, another officer comes to the desk with a full stack of papers. He barks at me to tell him my name, which I do. However, between the time the warrant was written and the day I was arrested, I'd gotten married, so I told him my married name without really thinking about it. He flips through the papers and flips through the papers. And about the third time he starts flipping, I finally realized what I'd done. So I said, it might be under my maiden name, which is blank. He starts yelling at me for not telling him that the first time, and now I'm sobbing. A female officer takes me into a room to search me, although fortunately I didn't have to totally strip down or cough. Ugh. She proceeds to tell me, "You need to calm down. If I put you in there crying like this, they're gonna be on you like white on rice." Yeah, because that's totally gonna make me calm down. Eventually, they put me in this cell with one girl who I got the impression was a gang member of some sort, and a very motherly-looking black lady. I sit down in a corner and make myself as small as possible. The gang girl comes over and starts making fun of my clothes and harassing me until the motherly lady shoos her off and sits down next to me. She pats my leg and tells me it's gonna be fine, then asks why I'm there. I tell her that I bounced a check, but I didn't realize I bounced it, so I was arrested. She smiles and tells me it'll be alright. I'll be there a couple of hours, they'll book me, and then they'll let me go with a court date. And not to get myself so worked up. I thank her and ask her why she's there. "Oh, I tried to murder my husband with a meat cleaver. The judge says he was inclined to give me leniency, but I told him, 'Judge, you let me out of here and I'll go after the son of a gun again.' So he's letting me cool down." My eyes must have been the size of saucers. Now I'm even more terrified. I sit there for a few minutes, then excuse myself for the bathroom. But once I was there, I realized there were no doors and no privacy at all, so I changed my mind. When I came back out, I sat down on the floor near the phones. About 5 minutes later, another girl is put in with us. This one is jerking and scratching her skin and acting very strange. I'm sitting there just staring at her as she picks up the phone to call someone. Then I hear psst, psst. I look around and see the motherly lady motioning to me. She mouths, "Come over here" at me, so I move back over to where she's sitting. She tells me the girl is about to flip out and I don't want to be there when it happens. I swear those words were no sooner out of her mouth than when the girl went insane. She started screaming and clawing at herself and hitting herself on the head with the phone receiver. Gang girl very calmly walks over to pound on the door, insisting that they come get the drug girl out. They do and everything quiets back down. The three of us sit there for a couple of hours before they take gang girl out. Then a little while later they come to get me, do the whole fingerprinting, mugshot thing, and then they release me with a bunch of paperwork. Now, here I am at the jail, and my car is still out on the tollway. My mother, who worked at the same hospital I worked at, was having her retirement party that particular day, and my sister was there, so I called the unit and got my sister on the line. Sister, I need a favor. Okay, what's up? I need you to come pick me up, but you cannot tell Mom where I am. Okay, where are you? I'm at a jail? You're in jail? Shut up, shut up, shut up! She comes to pick me up, and I was fortunate that the doctor I worked for thought it was hilarious, so I didn't get fired. I did end up having to work on my birthday to make up for the day I was out, but I felt like I got off pretty easy, all things considered. I mean, OP, the crime was not that bad. You definitely didn't deserve straight-up jail time for it. Not that I'm saying I wouldn't understand if they wanted to or, needed to. I don't know how law works, man. All I'm saying that in my head, what OP did and going to prison or jail doesn't add up. Anyway, it does sound like a harrowing experience. And I bet you will never bounce a check again. Or if you do, you will catch it immediately. I can only imagine the crap you got from your sister for that for the rest of time, though. So have fun with that, OP. Story 7. I was arrested while trying to schedule a diversion class I had missed. Missing the class violated a plea bargain stemming from a DUI I had gotten months before. I was immediately taken to processing. This was a Friday about noon. Unfortunately, the court was full for the day, so I didn't get to see the judge until the following Monday. I was put in a group cell with about 30 people. At first, I tried to keep a low profile. Grabbed a book off a shelf and began to read it. It was some silly romance novel, but it was all that was available. Then, some gangbanger saw me reading. He took my book and started yelling, "Look at Mr. Smarty Pants reading books over here. He thinks he's too good for us." I was scared crapless. I wanted no part of a jail fight. I just wanted to read and get through the weekend. Luckily, a guy who was often in jail but a really cool dude came and put the banger in his place. Gave me the book back and asked, "You know how to write too? Can you help me write a letter, my girl?" I proceeded to help write letters for 5 to 6 different cellmates. It was surreal. I became a protected guy all because I helped some bad dudes communicate with the outside world. The letters I wrote were amazing. One guy had me tell his girlfriend how much he wanted to lick her butt. Seriously. One guy had a newborn at home. He was out buying formula when he was picked up for a parole violation. His household had no phone, so his fiancée had no idea what happened to him or their car for 3 days. He cried when we were writing the letter. I was humbled by the experience. I got sentenced to 10 days for missing the class and got out in 5 total. I ended up getting high fives and hugs from some of my cellmates as I was released. All in all, it was a positive experience, all things considered. Story 8. I was arrested at 5 p.m. Questioning, booking, transfer, etc. I'm not given a bunk assignment until 3 a.m. I'm 6'3" and 330 pounds, built but fat. More of an out-of-shape wrestler. When I was assigned, I listed all of my medical problems: diabetic, high blood pressure, long list. The buzzer goes off. Guard opens the door and then slams it shut. The sound. The fricking sound. The atmosphere. Crap. The first words I hear in a deep southern voice is, "Boy, you got a pretty mouth. Come sleep near Daddy." I stopped, frozen. The loudspeaker comes on and the guard yells, "Get to your bunk, now!" I go in the 30-man 2-tier tank and straight to my bunk. Never slept. Just thinking how to protect myself. Fight to the death. Let them know you'll bite and fight dirty. Never closed my eyes. Buzzer goes off. "The day room is open." I see the person who yelled out at me. A 70-year-old man in a wheelchair, bald and barely alive. I see other old men who can hardly walk. I was in the hospital ward. Infirmary, sick tank, whatever. The old man couldn't stop laughing. "You should have seen your face, boy." They did that to every person who came in at night. Freaked them out. Turns out they were the coolest bunch of people I've ever been with. They gave me the rules of the tank. No fighting, no stealing, no screwing, etc. Second time wasn't as nice. I was thrown into a zoo. Spit at 20 times on my way to the bunk assignment when one hit me directly in the mouth. I went berserk and fought. Got my butt beat nicely. Never got spat at again. Story 9. After leaving the 4-week intake prison, I found myself, following a 10-hour bus ride shackled in a school bus without windows, in a maximum security prison with a towel, 2 pairs of boxers, 2 pairs of jeans, 2 shirts, a toothbrush, and a bar of soap. I hadn't showered in 2 days, and not smelling like crap is important in prison, so I made my way to the herd shower and got in. Now, I wasn't necessarily scared, but I also wasn't enthusiastic to be showering with a bunch of dudes, of course. I turned on my spigot and started soaping up, and dropped my precious bar of soap to the ground. The shower was silent as I turned around and stared at my soap slipping away on the floor. All eyes were on me. I had to choose quickly, so I did what came naturally. I started laughing out loud. I just roared with laughter. After a few seconds, everyone in the shower started laughing with me. In that moment, we shared in the absurdity of our situation and enjoyed a good old prison shower joke. It also really helped quell my biggest fear about prison, actually, which was that I was going to be assaulted. I was a youngish white man who didn't know anyone and wasn't affiliated with anything, and I was going in alone. But that day gave me a lot of confidence and strength. My first thoughts were about being assaulted. After that day, my biggest fear became that I would relapse while inside. Story 10. I went to jail for a couple of days when I was 20 years old. I had a bad reaction with the drinking and medication and was having a panic attack when my friends called an ambulance. The cops came to help EMS and they ended up handcuffing me and carrying me to the ambulance. I ended up biting one of the cops in the leg and was arrested for aggravated battery against an officer. I have no recollection of any of this and woke up handcuffed to a hospital bed. I was scared and all I wanted to do was see my family. Because I was under arrest, they couldn't allow that. So as soon as I was cleared, they put me in the back of a paddy wagon and took me to the police station. I had been arrested before for a misdemeanor, and that time I was able to call my mom from holding. I kept asking for it, but never got it. They told me I could get one after I was booked into county. The next day I got to county, and while I was being booked, I never got the chance to make a call, because they shut off the phones and threatened us with pumpkin heads because of someone acting up. One of the guys I sort of befriended named Repo reassured me that once we got on deck I could make a phone call. Spent the day sitting in the bullpens waiting to hear my name called, but it never came. Then finally realized they sort of lost me and stuck me with a random group. Because the jail was crowded, they ended up having us spend the night in maximum security where there was some room. I tried to get some sleep, but my cellmate was busy chatting with a member of the same gang as him that was actually in maximum. During a period of time, they were slowed out of their cells. The entire time, all I could think about was my family and friends and how they must hate me. That, and how much I missed them. They moved us out of there the next day, and I got stuck waiting in the bullpens again until space opened up for me. It finally did, and I got taken to what was to be my cell for however long it would be. What I cared about most was finally getting to a phone and calling home. I called my house a few times, and no one picked up. I was devastated and thought my suspicions were true. My parents hated me. You could only call landlines, and my home phone was the only one I had memorized. So I had no one else to call. I went back to my bed and talked a little with my cellmate. He told me about a trick where you could call a cell phone and leave messages when you're leaving your name. Kind of like that old commercial. I decided to call my best friend and try that. I did this a couple of times to leave messages about where I was, and during the last one of these it somehow briefly connected, and I heard his voice say hello before disconnecting again. I felt like crying. I was so happy to hear a familiar voice. I decided to give calling home another shot, and I finally got through. My cousin had apparently forgotten the phone outside after going for a smoke, so she never heard my call. She let me know that my parents were in the process of bailing me out and I should be out of there soon. I ended up getting out of there later that night, but the whole time I was there, the only thing going through my mind was my family and friends and how much I missed them. Story 11. I was arrested at Mardi Gras one year for battery on an officer with injury. Oops. Up until this point, and since then, I've pretty much been as straight as a board. I think I've had a whopping 2 speeding tickets and 1 parking ticket in my life. I'm early 40s. Got hauled into the New Orleans jail, freaked out of my mind. Here I am, a tubby white geek. Kept to myself in the booking area. Finally got to my cell well into the evening. They hauled another inmate out of the cell to make room for me, so I've instantly made at least one friend. Tried my damnedest to sleep, but I'm a snorer, so I didn't really. Didn't want to wake up the other guy in the cell. Spent the day talking to the guy. He was in on drugs. We talked about our life experiences. I got out on bail. Fast forward a few months and I've pled to a lesser charge of battery on an officer and got sentenced to 17 days. Having spent one night in, I steel myself for 17 days of boredom. I'd researched a lot and had my wife send me a CISSP book to study while I was in. Since the lesser charge wasn't a felony, I was stuck in an open dorm with lots of inmates. That was a trip. You feel like a new student walking into a full classroom. Where am I gonna bunk? Who's already eyeballing me to screw with me? I chose a top bunk of a bunk bed, and an older weathered guy said, "Hey man, don't sleep up there. A big guy like you should be on the first one. Here's an open bunk right here," and pointed me towards an empty rack. I took it and was extremely on alert, trying not to jump out of my skin. Was this guy looking for someone to drop the soap in the shower, or was he a decent guy? It turns out it was the latter. We talked like adults. He helped me understand the routine. I gave him the extra food I got. I was barely able to eat most of the food there, and he shared some of his extras. He would give me his applesauce, for example. All in all, a decent guy. He was in for drugs and theft, as were a lot of the other inmates. And I'm not proud of what I did, let me tell ya. If you've got to go to jail, being able to say you're in for pled down from battery on an officer with an injury certainly doesn't hurt with the other inmates. Being in for certain things will definitely help you out in jail or prison, it's true. Doing something bad to a cop is a pretty good one to get some respect. Ironically enough, I guess. I'm glad you had a good experience, OP. Although, I don't think OP ever said what they did to the officer, like what happened? I'm kind of interested. What did and I quote, this is him saying it, a tubby white geek do to injure an officer? Like, I have to know. Story 12. Last time I went to jail, I went to central booking to schedule my community service. I was immediately handcuffed and pitbull chained to a chair for an hour, very confused. They told me that due to the discretion of the warden and a pending trial that technically I was innocent until proven guilty, they were going to give me straight time. The booking officer, who I watched his lunch for an hour in the back, claimed that he had called the warden, which was a lie, and said I was just going to jail instead. I asked for some phone numbers out of my phone, which was sitting next to me in a bag. They refused. I had no phone numbers. Nobody knew where I was except that I had gone to jail to schedule my community service and was immediately strip-searched and thrown into a concrete box. In the first few minutes of sitting there, I realized that all the dumb stuff I had done to get there really wasn't worth it. It was terrifying, demoralizing, and really, really boring. The food was horrendous. They neglected to give me my 3 meds I was on despite the fact I was a seizure risk. Life pro tip, stay the hell out of jail. Once again, not a legal expert, but refusing to give you your meds sounds like excellent grounds for a lawsuit or something. Like, I don't understand why they would ever do that, or why they would ever be allowed to. I don't know, something seems really wrong about that to me. But also, a lot of stuff that goes on in prison isn't exactly, morally or logically sound, I suppose. Story 13. I actually arrived to prison on the day of my 19th birthday. It was kind of scary going in there for the first and only time. There's gangs and things. Loyalty to what I thought was my family at the time. I had some big old white pride guy fall asleep on my shoulder on the whole ride there, which took about 3 days. When I got there, my first initial thought was, oh, frick. And damn, it's my birthday. I only had 30 months to do, which wasn't so terrible. The irony was I was also getting out 5 days after my 21st birthday, so I had something to look forward to. Walking into reception is pretty nerve-wracking. You might have to fight the second you get there. I didn't have to, but getting naked in front of other men was frickin' weird, and I never got completely used to it. All in all, those 3 years were a learning experience, and I wouldn't change it if I could. Taught me that there are consequences to your actions, and I had to learn that the hard way. Story 14. Had to do 5 days for a probation violation. Booze hound / drug addict. I failed a urine test. The first day consisted of me checking in at county and sitting in booking for 24 hours. The booking area had the most uncomfortable chairs created. If there's a hell, it will be filled with all these hard, plastic chairs that are impossible to sleep in. It sucked. All I could think about was how much it sucked, and how I had no one to blame but myself. Decided right there to start taking the mandatory addiction classes seriously and start trying. Otherwise, I would just end up back in jail surrounded by kid touchers and violent offenders, which is not pleasant. Best thing that ever happened to me. Story 15. Was in jail for a month. Speeding and DUI mixed with missing first court appearance got me a 90-day sentence with 60 suspended. Went into jail that day right after my court appearance. I wasn't scared really because I live in a small city, just let down. Like, you realize your whole life is to not go to jail ever, then you're there. And you realize this is now your life. Guards talk crap, real crap, so you can stay longer. It taught me I never want to end up back in that situation again. I was 23 and served my 30 days. I'm 28 now and actually am glad that I went through that, because I was very reckless as a young adult. I have a huge bias personally towards DUIs. I think it's one of the dumbest things you can do. Super disrespectful of the lives of everyone else on the road. It would be a different story if it were just you in danger, but it's simply not. Anyway, I am glad to hear about jail or prison reforming someone who has done something like this, because it's really reckless and OP realizes that. So, respect where it's due. That being said, I still don't like that you did that, OP, but I do like that you will probably never do it again. Story 16. Got arrested for weed possession a while back. I spent the first 30 hours alone in a booking cell in a turtle suit. I was mostly just upset because I didn't want to hurt myself and wanted to know what was going on, when I would get real clothes, when I could call my family, etc. At one point the next morning, they brought over the inmates from the housing blocks that were going to court, and put a couple of them in my holding cell to wait. Hindsight, they were probably more unsure of me than I was of them, because turtle suits automatically make people think you are crazy. After finally getting cleared by the psychiatrist, they let me change into oranges. Real underwear and pants never felt so good, and took me to the housing block. I remember being intimidated when I first walked in, because people will swarm you when you're new to find out what you're in for, and whether you're on detox meds that they can try and bribe you for. I wasn't. The worst part was the food, and additional lockdowns because people wanted to be hard. Overall experience, 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. Story 17. I went to jail for one night due to a missed child support payment. It was my fault. I didn't have the money and I knew there was the possibility, but it was nearly a year later and I had continued to make payments. Turns out I had a warrant out because of the missed payment, and ended up getting arrested right in the courtroom during a custody hearing. I spent hours in a holding cell with 2 other guys, a dad and a son. Don't remember why they were arrested. The kid was late teens, early 20s and just had on a pair of shorts and was shivering. I was dressed up for court, so gave him my undershirt to wear. I was quite a bit bigger than him, so he looked ridiculous, but it was a little more comfortable at least. Never got the shirt back, but that's fine. The biggest thing I remember was the smell. It smells like a zoo. Crap, pee, too many animals in a small place, kind of stink. I finally got moved to a cell and met my first friend who was in for making terroristic threats. I felt a little inadequate with my child support charge. I got asked to play poker using little ripped up pieces of cards as chips. They weren't very good at poker and I was winning. I ended up winning someone's breakfast cake. I never did find out what that was. I then started wondering if beating these guys at poker my first night in jail was the best idea, so I proceeded to lose quite a bit on purpose. At about midnight, I got transported to a different county where my charges had originated from. Had a nice conversation with the officer who drove me there, and he let me know that the child support charges wouldn't really affect me down the road at all, so that was nice. Got to the new county jail and it was twice as bad as the first one. Guys were just in there screaming their heads off, obviously on drugs and mad at the world. It was a bit scary and really sad to see humans acting that way. This new county jail smelled worse than the last. Slept one night on something that looked like a large sled because there was only one bed in the room. The next morning my dad and girlfriend showed up and paid the small amount of back child support I still had left, so I didn't end up staying in for 90 days. All in all, it was a terrible but eye-opening experience and I hope I never have to go back. TLDR, jails smell terrible, people act like animals when you cage them, and don't go to jail. Story 18. So this is about most of my time in jail. It certainly didn't count as prison, since first day of 30 hours is basically everything. This was years ago now. I made a mistake. I had a fist fight with a family member over chores, and a third family member was too scared that one of us or both would turn it on number 3 to break it up themselves, so they called the cops. Something like half the department showed up and I was kinda shocked, since there were no weapons involved. It was just weird how seriously they treated things in a small town that I'd seen handled by 1 or 2 cops in a large town. I was a bit too numb and already too self-hating at this point to really reflect on that. I spent 12 hours laying down, staring at a wall. I'm a high-intensity person who always needs at least one thing to focus on. This is a bad combo with jail. During this entire time, my cellmates, none of whom were accused of anything so minor as misdemeanor assault, are laughing and joking, watching TV and playing poker for consumables. I peed and then I went back to the wall. I didn't sleep and I didn't eat. They couldn't give me anything with ingredients on it and I have nasty allergies. I was really convinced that my life was over because I'd made a mistake. For the first and last time in my life, I might have actually qualified as a danger to myself. But that would have been impossible because I didn't have the energy to act on it. It's a much more minor mistake than that. No one was seriously hurt, but that feeling got me to accept and thank the judge for unsupervised probation and some anger counseling. I would thank her again if I knew how to approach her without either interrupting court or making her afraid I'd turned my now very well-controlled anger on her. Because she deserves it. Saw right through the situation. Asked me all of 3 questions beyond the plea before basically giving me the minimum. Saw through me too. I swear she realized just how much simply getting arrested had shaken me, and was rolling the dice that I would never show up in her courtroom again if she did what she ended up doing. Frickin' horrible experience for irrational and personal reasons, but it frickin' worked. You know, I think I have sort of heard a biased point of view when it comes to jail and prison. Because in my past experience, I feel like 90+% of stories I hear about jail or prison were just awful. Like, they learned nothing, they didn't get any better, it just sucked, everyone was mad, and basically, it was just hell on earth. There were a surprising number of people in this thread who were like, it really helped. It was actually one of the best experiences of my life because it put me on the right path. And you know what? I gotta give credit where credit's due. That is technically exactly what jail or prison is supposed to do. Definitionally, at least. Privatized prisons and stuff like that, I don't know what their actual goal is. Who does? I don't even think they do, to be honest, other than make money. But for everyone in this thread who had some sort of revelation or managed to work on themselves because of this experience, good on you. That is really great work to do on yourself, and I'm impressed. Anyway, that is all the stories we have for today. For now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Stay out of jail, and I will see you in the next one.